Hi there, and a very warm welcome to It Is What It Is with Omeo Favor, the captain. You can follow us on Facebook at Kingly Favor Studio Reloaded, YouTube at Kingly Favor Studio, TikTok at Kingly Favor Studio Reloaded, Instagram at Kingly Favor Studio Reloaded. I want to thank you so much for your likes, the views, the shares, and the much love. May the Lord do you well. Fortunately or unfortunately, we are now going to look at the fourth way in which sexual immorality captures its victims into its mouth, simply because there were so many questions that were asked last time, and I felt obliged to answer only one today. And for the sake of time, and for the sake of moving on to other points, I would kindly request that you please allow me to answer this one question, and then next week we shall proceed to the fourth way in which the ancient dragon, sexual immorality, lures its victims into its mouth. Now, of all the comments and the questions that I came across, I only found one question that is worth answering on camera, that is worth giving more information and details about. One person was asking, why do you sound so convinced? Why do you sound so confident when you say that a man of God is just like any other man unless they are eunuchs? And I found it necessary to answer this question simply because many people who are naive, or many people have fallen into sexual immorality or sexual sin simply because they were very naive to think a man of God does not have sexual feelings. So they lost their guard and they did not keep their distance. So at the end of the day, they entered into sexual sin and sexual immorality because they viewed a man of God like I don't know how to put it, like a man who is from heaven. But now I want to clarify yet again that a man of God is just like any other man. I will start by laying down the three categories of eunuchs, and this is found in the book of Matthew chapter 19 verses 12, and so we read. For some are eunuchs because they were born that way. That is category number 1. Others were made that way by men. That is category number 2. And others have renounced marriage because of the kingdom of heaven. Now, let us look at category number 1. Some were eunuchs because they were born that way. When I read this, John the Baptist crosses my mind. We all know how the birth of John the Baptist came about, and he lived his life in the desert. So his lifestyle was not a lifestyle of a family man. So we can simply say that John was a eunuch in the way in which, right from birth, he was a eunuch right from birth. The second one is others were made that way by men. Being made a eunuch by men, this means castration. And this is what happened to the children of Israel when they went to Babylon. This is what happened to Daniel, Shadrach, and Abednego. They were castrated. They became eunuchs. Now that is the second category. The third category is others are eunuchs because they have renounced marriage because of the kingdom of heaven. Now, Apostle Paul comes into my mind when we read the third category. We all know the story of Apostle Paul, how he started out as Saul and ended up as Apostle Paul, the servant of God. And when Paul talks about marriage, he talks about it in terms of he has made a choice not to marry. So this is something that he purposely did so that he can pursue the things of God. So Paul was a eunuch in this dimension. Let's go to the book of 1 Corinthians 7, verses 1 to 5. Now these are Paul's sentiments concerning marriage. Now for the matters you wrote about, it is good for a man not to marry. But since there is so much immorality, each man should have his own wife, and each woman her own husband. Now this is point number 1. that goes to show you that a man of God is a man to the core. Be it an apostle, be it a reverend, be it a pastor, be it a bishop, whatever the title of the man of God is, if this person has a wife and children, it goes to show that this person has got sexual urges and is perfectly normal. One thing we're discussing here is there's nothing wrong with sexual urges. Actually, God put them there for a purpose. Sexual urges become wrong when they are diverted to the wrong place with the wrong people, that is outside the confines of marriage, or when the sexual urges are expressed in the wrong way. In the wrong way, I mean bestiality, lesbianism, being gay, incest, and all that kind of stuff. So there's nothing wrong with sexual urges. There's nothing wrong with having these feelings. They become wrong when they're expressed in the wrong way or expressed outside the boundaries or the confines of marriage. So proof number one that a man of God is a man to the core, that a man of God is a man, is the fact that they have married or are married. Because Apostle Paul says, I have decided to stay without a... But since there is so much immorality, each man should have his own wife and each woman her own husband. The husband should fulfill his marital duty to his wife, and likewise the wife to her husband. The wife's body does not belong to her alone, but also to her husband. In the same way, the husband's body does not belong to him alone, but also to his wife. Do not deprive each other except by mutual consent and for a time, so that you may devote yourself to prayer. Then come back again, so that Satan will not tempt you because of your lack of self-control. Number two, if you're out there and you're very naive around a man of God, and you think that just because they are anointed or they are men of God, they don't have sexual feelings and sexual urges, you are wrong. If you look at a man of God and think that just because they have a wife, there is nothing sexual that can happen between the two of you, it is wrong. That school of thought is so wrong and very deceiving. Because Apostle Paul says, a husband and a wife, you should not deny each other. But if you choose to, because you want to set some time apart in prayer, make sure both of you agree to it. Then don't do it for a very long time, lest the devil comes in and causes one of you to enter into sexual immorality. So this means that a man of God can have a wife, but can still have illicit sex outside marriage. Either out of carelessness, either out of selfishness, whichever the reason. So the fact that a man of God has a wife should not make you feel very secure, should not make you lose your guard. This scripture shows us clearly that a man is still a man. Chapter 6, I say this as a concession, not as a command. I wish that all men were as I am, but each man has his own gift from God. One has this gift and another has that. Apostle Paul could contain his sexual urges. He actually terms it as a gift. And he goes ahead to say, I wish every man was like me. But since everybody has a gift of their own, I think I'm good like this. So if others cannot hold up their sexual urges, then they should go ahead and marry. So one point that I'm driving across is one proof that a man of God is a man to the core is the fact that they have a wife and children. And even if they don't have children, the fact that they have a wife is proof enough that this man is a man to the core. Other examples I shall cite that goes to show that a man of God is still a man of God to the core, and they still have got sexual urges, and the reason why you keep your boundaries is found in the book of Genesis. Abraham, as we all know, was a friend of God. Actually, God called Abraham my friend. God could not do anything without revealing it to Abraham. And so there was a situation in Abraham's house. Abraham, the man of God. Abraham, the servant of God. Actually, God called Abraham at a certain point, my prophet. Yes, but I'm here to show you that Abraham never had his sexual urges in control. This is found in Genesis chapter 16 and verses 1 to 3. Now Sarai, Abraham's wife, had borne him no children, but she had an Egyptian maidservant called Hagar. So she said to Abram, "The Lord has kept me from having children. Go sleep with my maidservant. Perhaps I can build a family through her." Note, that is verse 2. Even before we move away from verse 2, we go ahead to read. Abraham agreed to what Sarai said. So after Abraham had been living in Canaan 10 years, Sarai, his wife, took her Egyptian maidservant Hagar and gave her to her husband to be his wife. Verses 4, he slept with Hagar and she conceived. Now, I want you to imagine a scenario. A man of God today and a woman of God who is the wife to the man of God, they cannot have children. And so the wife to the pastor or the bishop or the reverend or whoever it is suggests to the husband, you know what? We have a house girl here. Why can't you sleep with the house girl atuzalie mtoto? You would expect the servant of the Most High God, the man of God, to resist and say something like this: "Be it far from me if I should commit such a grievous act before the living God." Abraham went ahead and slept with the maid servant. We don't see a situation where Abraham put up an argument with Sarai. In fact, he agreed immediately. He liked the idea. We don't see anywhere where he opposed. So this goes to show you that Abraham, the prophet of God, Abraham, the man of God, was a man to the core. His sexual urges were still very intact. For those of you wondering how I'm saying that Abraham was a man of God, let's go to Genesis chapter 20. This shows how close Abraham was to God and how he was such a precious man of God or servant before the eyes of God. And even this one brings out that part whereby God called him my prophet. That is Genesis chapter 20. Now Abraham moved on from there into the region of the Negev and lived between Kadesh and Shur. For a while he stayed there in Gerar, and there Abraham said to his wife Sarah, "She is my sister." Then Abimelech, king of Gerar, sent for Sarah and took her. But God said to Abimelech in a dream one night and said to him, "You are as good as dead because of the woman you have taken. She is a married woman." Now Abimelech had not gone near her. So he said, "Lord, will you destroy an innocent nation? Did he not say to me, she's my sister, and didn't she also say he's my brother? I've done this with a clear conscience and clean hands." Then God said to him in a dream, "Yes, I know you did this with a clear conscience, and so I have kept you from sinning against me. That is why I did not let you touch her." Verses 7, and most important, "Now return the man's wife, for he is a prophet, and he will pray for you, and you will live." But if you do not return her, you may be sure that you and yours will die. Where? The prophet of the Most High God, who had previously slept with a maidservant, who did not put up opposition, but willingly decided to sleep with the maidservant. And I want to go ahead and remind you that Abraham also had another wife called Keturah. The Bible in some instances go to show us that Sarah was a very, very beautiful woman. That is why even Abimelech was picking on her, because she was a very beautiful woman. But her beauty did not hinder Abraham from having another wife, from having concubines, did not hinder Abraham from sleeping with the maidservant. Abraham was a man of God. Abraham was a prophet of God. Abraham and God were very close. In fact, God at a point said he would not do anything in as far as Sodom and Gomorrah was concerned before disclosing it to Abraham. So you can imagine how deep that relationship was. But then again, Abraham, the man of God, still had his sexual urges intact. Now this goes to show you that a man of God is still a man to the core, that his sexual urges are still intact, and that you need to draw your boundaries. Judges chapter 13. We are going to look at a mighty man, a mighty servant of God, who was actually, his birth was announced. You know, I'm yet to come across a man of God currently living whose birth was announced. Let's look at the book of Judges chapter 13. Verses 2. A certain man of Zorah named Manoah from the clan of the Danites had a wife who was sterile and remained childless. Verses 3. The angel of the Lord appeared to her and said, you are sterile and childless, but you're going to conceive and have a son. Verses 4. Now see to it that you drink no wine or other fermented drink, and that you do not eat anything unclean, because you will conceive and give birth to a son. No razor may be used on his head, because the boy is to be a Nazarite, set apart to God from birth. Mark you, Samson was set apart to God from birth. So Samson was a man of God from birth. Samson was a servant of the high God from birth. And he will begin the deliverance of Israel from the hands of the Philistines. Now, every pastor, every bishop, every reverend, every apostle, whatever the title of the man of God is, his work is to deliver the people of God. That is his assignment here or on earth. So it was not different from Samson. Samson was set apart from birth so that he could deliver the children of Israel. But it appears that Samson is yet another man of God who could not keep his sexual urges together. And this is seen in the book, verse chapter 14. Samson went down to Timnah and saw there a young Philistine woman. When he returned, he said to his father and mother, I have seen a Philistine woman in Timnah. Now get her for me as my wife. So Samson had a thing for women. Samson could not get his London Bridge in control in as far as women are or were concerned. In chapter 16 verse 1, we see one day Samson went to Gaza where he saw a prostitute. He went in to spend the night with her. And we also know about the story of Samson and Delilah. Sexual urges, uncontrollable sexual urges, is what brought Samson down. Samson was a man of God right from the word go. But in as far as women were concerned, in as far as sexual urges were concerned, he had no control. Now, I want you to note something. The first woman that Samson sets his eyes upon, he goes and tells his parents, I want this woman to be my wife. But that does not stop him from going to a prostitute to sleep with her. It doesn't matter what transpired in between, but simply because he could not keep his sexual urges in control, he totally lost it. One woman after the other, one woman after the other. Remember, we said Samson was set apart for the work of God right from birth. So Samson was a man of God. Samson was a servant of God. But we see that Samson was a man to the core because of his sexual urges. So, my dear church members, the next time you get naive, when you get close to a man of God, because you think they are men of God and they don't have sexual feelings, you are mistaken. The Bible talks about testing the spirits. And this is what I mean by testing the spirits. If you get close to a man of God who is having dirty talk, keep your boundaries. If you come across a man of God who calls you or texts you in ways that are not proper, in ways that are indecent, keep your distance and cut off communication. Do not be naive. Don't say that this is a man of God. Don't say that this is a toothless lion. You will find yourself into sexual immorality. If you find a man of God calling you and using names like sweetheart, dear darling, you need to run. You need to keep your boundaries. Do not be naive. A man of God is still a man of God to the core. Just like I said last time, a man of God, the only difference with a man of God is they are anointed. They have been set apart. Being set apart is one, and having sexual urges is another. The fact that they are men of God, they have been consecrated, the oil is on them, that does not hinder their sexual feelings. That does not curb their sexual feelings. And remember, we said these sexual urges, there's nothing wrong with the sexual urges. God actually put them there for a reason. These are beautiful things when they're exploited or channeled in the right way. There's nothing wrong with sexual urges. But sexual urges, if expressed in the wrong way, if done outside the confines of marriage with the wrong people, is wrong. As a church member, if you involve yourself in sexual entanglement with a man of God, it is wrong. And if I've not yet convinced you, I want you to figure this scenario. Think about a baby boy being born today. That boy grows in the favor of God and men. The boy grows and grows and grows. And at the age of around 13, the parents or the spiritual authority discovers that that boy actually has the calling of God upon him. So the parents actually train the boy to be a servant of God or a man of God in future. That means this boy will grow like a normal boy. That means he will grow or pass through the teenage phase like any other teenager. Will go and become a youth like any other youth. And when I talk about that, it means that his sexual feelings are still intact. His sexual urges are still intact. So he is just like any other young man growing. Now, a time reaches now when that call of God upon his life has to be unveiled. And this is done through ordination, official consecration. The oil is poured upon the boy who was born years back, who grew like a normal boy. Now, by the time he's getting the oil on his head to officially become a man of God, does not mean that he skipped the stages of growing like a normal man. The fact that the oil is coming upon him does not remove his sexual aspect, does not remove the sexual feelings, does not remove the sexual urges. The pouring of the oil or his consecration or his ordination is simply officially setting him apart to do the things of God. Now that means this man of God who grew up normally from being a boy to a young man into an adult who cannot be ordained to be a man of God, it means he never skipped any process of growing up. It means that he's still human to the core. Now this oil has just come to confirm what the Lord had in store for him, to set him apart for his work. And remember now, if this man of God is not a eunuch, it means he is a man of God. That means, usipokaa vizuri, you shall be entered into sexual sin or sexual immorality. I want to believe that I have convinced people who are walking in ignorance, people who are walking with a lot of confidence around men of God, thinking that they are not men, that they are simply from heaven. We need to change that perspective. We need to draw our boundaries. We need to approach them with respect, and we need to be decent around the man of God, because men of God are still men to the core, only that have been set apart and ordained for the good work of our Lord. You can follow us on Facebook at Kingly Favor Studio Reloaded, Instagram at Kingly Favor Studio Reloaded, TikTok at Kingly Favor Studio Reloaded, and most definitely on YouTube at Kingly Favor Studio. If you have not yet subscribed, please do so. Greatly appreciated. It is what it is. So long. God bless you.